You are going cloud. So I see Shraddha's joined in. Bhairav Parekh. Hi Priya. Kalpana Ajgaonkar joined in. So raise your hands if you're able to hear us. Oh, that's perfect. Okay. Jainam has come in. Mohini is there. Priyanka is there. Priyanka Patil. Great. Awesome. So we'll just wait for 5 minutes
No,
for.
no, no. We'll start on time.
Okay. Yeah.
Just we just live streaming on YouTube. It will just take a minute and then we'll start.
Yep. Okay. So are we live on YouTube?
I'm. It's
Siddharth's coming. Siddharth Shankara and Siddharth Zaveri. Okay.
so live streaming connection is getting timed out.
Okay.
So we'll drop the idea.
Yeah. So yeah, let's start.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the idea behind today's webinar, first of all, thank you all for taking your time out and coming for today's webinar. So the idea is that a perception has basically been created around wealth creation. Most people tend to believe that it's like super hard. Some feel that only if they had more money, and then they would have gone for basically investing and creating their wealth. While some feel, it's just it's a lame way of basically postponing their current enjoyments to life. But what if I was supposed to tell you that you can start small and at the same time you can enjoy your life and create wealth as well. So uh, I'll from my personal experience, my goal is to buy a Lamborghini in the next 20 years. But it doesn't mean that I don't have to buy a car right now. So I can enjoy my life currently and still have enough money to basically fulfill my dreams. So let's go over to Saurabh and as he takes us towards that journey. So Saurabh, why don't you please start?
So thank you so much. Thank you, Jinay. First of all, I want to thank everyone that on this evening you've decided to join us for the webinar for a very boring topic of learning about money. Although health and wealth are two most important areas of life, but seldomly we want to give any kind of weightage to it or learn from it or try to develop it. So thanks a lot. I think all of us already have exhausted our lifetime quota of attending webinars in last 2-3 months of lockdown. I have been attending webinars like almost every alternate day or so, and still you chose to come here. So thanks a lot for here. Thanks a lot for coming here. So how we've designed is that next 35 to 40 minutes or 45 minutes or so, I'll speak and give you presentation about what I think would be a good basic steps for creating wealth. And after that, Ginny is going to moderate it, so you can ask as many questions as you want, and I would want to answer all of that. So with that, let us start. So I hope my screen is visible. Yeah, Ginny, is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay, I have put on a mic, so I will not be able to hear anything. Yeah. So today's session is about how to create wealth for financial freedom with simple steps. And let's see what we have in store. And I hope you enjoy this, make the most out of it. We have already mailed you a worksheet. If you have not received it, don't worry, we'll send it again. You can just let us know. So basically, okay, here we go. So just a brief introduction about myself. Most of you are family and friends who are attending here, so you would be knowing me. But for the benefit of others who don't know me, I am founder of Circle Wealth Advisors. I have a bit of media presence as well. I speak on this channel Radio 194.3 every day on the topic of personal finance. I've also done written some articles for Wedding Times and Midday and so on and so forth. So I hope with all my experience and learning that I have, I'm able to provide some value to you. So just to give you an overview of session, we have just divided the session into two parts. One, what we have done is that we are going to talk about simple financial planning steps because without any planning, it is almost impossible to create wealth. Otherwise, it would just happen out of accident. So what are the things that we can do to plan about reaching our financial goals? And then talk about simple wealth creation, things to do and not to do, and what are the things that we can use for our own wealth creation. So just to give you another confirmation, my presentation is not, it's not my original thoughts or something like that. It's a it is all collective wisdom of all the resources from books and people around me. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have friends and family members like you from whom I can learn. Also, very clearly, there is not a single intention to sell anything or convince you into anything. So the whole purpose of this presentation is for you to learn and take steps so that you can, and I'm coming to that as well. But we're not trying to sell you any other seminar or trying to sell you any other thing or any product. Also, like I said, what is more important is that it is not to educate, not to give any knowledge. Now you might be surprised that I'm attending this 1 hour seminar and I'm not, even if I don't learn anything, then what's the use? The use is that it is to help you resolve problems and most importantly take some actions about it, right? Whatever few baby steps that we can start taking from today, which will help us in set up our journey for financial well-being and wealth creation, is the intention. So just to give you an example, all of us, this is a picture of someone who's a winner or a loser, right? So what does this differentiate? So I was reading this very good book by James Clear. He has this book called Atomic Habits, and I've taken this few quotes from him, and he lays them down very beautifully. And the whole book is about creating new habits. I strongly recommend that if you can grab a hand on it, please read it though. So he says that winner and losers have the same goal. So people are not differentiated by the magnitude of goal they take, right? Probably all winners and all losers have same magnitude of goal, the kind of goal they want to take. But goals are only good for setting a direction. If you have a goal, they'll set up a good direction for you. But systems that you set up for yourself to achieve those goals are the best things to do for making progress. So you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the system, to your level of your systems, right? So today what we want to do is to create a few systems or at least actions that you can take so that you can set up on your path of wealth creation. So let us start with this small first reflection. We'll send you this sheet. If you have already received the sheet, maybe you can start filling up this sheet and think about one financial mistake you would have done in your life. Just to give you an example, there are some people who have too many loans. There are people who have investments locked in properties or some other places where they don't have liquidity at all. Or you feel that you have not been saving enough or you didn't start saving early. Also, if you feel that you don't have any kind of liquidity or buffer, given the kind of times that we are seeing right now, a lot of people have now realized that what is the importance of emergency fund and having some liquidity with you. If you feel that one of the mistakes that you have been doing is missing your credit card due payments or your insurance dues, another thing that a lot of people do is that they do too much of trading, whether it is in equities or it is even in mutual funds or even if it is in any other set class. But I don't think trading is something which can help you create wealth. And if you've realized that and you feel that's a mistake that you've done, maybe you can talk about that or write about that. And if you think that you've been investing without an end in your mind, just because with a product that you found to be attractive because it was about to be closed on, there was a last minute kind of availability to it and you invest it. So we are going to run a quick poll on this. And Jinay, will you run the poll? So these are the same things that I just mentioned. It would be great if all of you can start viewing this poll and start answering your questions. And for benefit of all of us, we'll exactly know what place we are in.
Okay, so we'll end poll now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah.
We have to end the poll. Can you show the results?
Yes.
Okay, so highest voting has come to not saving enough or not started saving early. And I'm glad that people realize that, you know, this is something which really impacts all of us. But what is good is that, you know, there is always a time to start. So once you realize this, you can always make good on those mistakes that you have done. It's a good reflection that we have seen that people have. Some of you have been trading, some of you have been even missing your credit card payments and all. So it's a good place that we start, that most of us agree that it is probably one of a big mistake that we don't save enough or we don't start saving early. You know, you can close the poll.
I'll just stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is what basic financial planning steps are. Okay. First, we start with budgeting. And I'm going to give you a few hacks that you can use so that you can make these things easy, and few do's and don'ts so that you don't fall into any kind of pitfall about while going about this. So budgeting, risk management. We are also going to talk about goal planning and investment planning. Today we're not going to speak about estate planning and monitoring because today's our most focus is on wealth creation rather than legacy planning or estate planning. So we want to talk a bit about budgeting, risk management, goal planning, and investment planning. And this is how the circle is complete. Once we start doing all this, we are actually moving towards our own financial well-being. So this is what I want you to do in terms of budgeting. You know, a lot of us have tried to keep our budgets by trying to maintain expenses. There are so many technologies which are now available. There are so many apps and things that you can do so that you can keep a track of your expenses and your income and budget for them. But what I feel like a diet, a lot of people are not able to follow it because it requires huge amount of patience and a discipline to get executed. However, technology is how much ever the technology is trying to automate things, still we are not able to complete it. So what we suggest to our clients is that you open two accounts with you. Most of us know the phenomena of opening a savings account. We know how it works, right? So let your saving account exist the way it is. What we advise you is that you open a separate bank account, which we call it as a spending account. Now, if you know that you feel that your budget to spend in a month, whether it is on cash or card or whatever it is say for example 30,000 rupees a month. Just transfer this 30,000 rupees to your spending account. You have to make sure that you're transferring money from a saving account to spending account only once in a month, and that's a fixed amount. Once, so then after that, whatever spending you do, if you want to swipe a debit card, you swipe from this account. If you want to pay your credit card bills, you pay from this account. If you want to withdraw any cash, you withdraw from this account. So all the spending that you're doing will be done only from spending account. With this simple system in place, you really don't have to worry about keeping track of your expenses. You don't have to worry about where your money is going, because in this account there will be only two kind of entries. Only one credit from your savings account and rest all debit of all your expenses. If you set this up, there is highly chances that you will be able to control your budget and you'll also be able to track it. So this is very, very simple hack. I have been doing it for myself. I have opened 2 accounts and I use one account which is available as an app. I have a debit card for it, and all my expenses are there. Also, it also safeguards you, because if a lot of people have this habit of keeping money in your savings account. So if you have huge amount of money lying in your savings account and you are using that account for doing transaction, it is exposed to some kind of uh, risk of theft and all. Here in this account, you are only keeping your 1 month spending, whatever is your budget. So there is not much which is exposed to it. So this is one simple hack that I wanted to talk to you about budgeting. Rest, I want to go into risks, and before I get into what I really want to talk about in terms of risk management, this is a survey which was done by a very renowned US magazine, and there were more than 3,000 participants who participated in the survey, and this is what they had given as to what their biggest regret was in terms of wealth management. So like most of us, they also said that they did not start saving for retirement, or they did not started saving early. Like most of us, they also said that they relied on too much on credit card, spent a lot of money and didn't pay their dues each month on time. But what is more important is if you see the bottom top right corner, that they did not maintain an adequate emergency fund. And if you think about it, uh, if what they experience is that if because they did not do this exercise, they felt that they took 9 years to recover if there was an emergency which took place. So first risk mitigation tool for all of us is to start creating an emergency fund, and liquidity is the boss. Like, I mean, a time like this, even if you have gold, you know that there are no jewelers which are open where you can go and sell your gold, right? So cash is the king at this point in time. So you know what should liquidity be. This is just a a cartoon about, if you don't have liquidity, people aren't going to accept your 10-year bonds for your day-to-day expenses. So this is what we have really been seeing. What is the impact of not having an emergency fund? So you can have your credit card interest could compound your expense. I mean, interest on credit card is one of the biggest rate or biggest dent in your wealth creation. Where in our country the interest rates are charged anywhere between 24 to 36% per annum. So if you don't have liquidity to pay them, although currently there is a moratorium going on, but still you are not, the interest is not waived off. They'll charge interest to you. They're just waiving off the penalty right now. Trouble paying your bills could damage your credit rating. Even your credit card bills, God forbid if there is a emergency which goes to paying your utility bills and all, it will all damage your credit rating. There are also chances that if you don't have adequate insurance and you don't have liquid, there might be a loss to access of good medical facilities, because in these times, if there is an emergency and you don't have enough cash to manage, then you might not be able to access best of the medical facilities. Lastly, what would happen is that if you have assets which can be sold, you might be forced to book losses or exit investments at huge cost. So there might be a penalty of exit or whatever it is. Like markets have tanked right now, although they've gone up a bit. But God forbid, if there's an emergency which is required, you either end up taking a loan from someone, some personal loan, or you're forced to book losses or exit investments. So these are the kind of impacts that people were talking, and it took them almost 9 years to recover those kind of impacts. So you have to think about how do you create emergency fund. So first thing that you have to do is that you have to define the amount of funds that should be available to you at any point of time. And this is the first and foremost condition, that it should be completely liquid. The money may be lying in your bank account, it can be lying in your fixed deposit, and we'll talk about what are those avenues which are available. Also, like I was mentioning, is that in this age where cash is not required, most of our transactions are getting cashless. Money is being paid either through debit card or net banking. We suggest that at least your 1 month's expense you should keep in hard cash. God forbid if there is any kind of natural calamity, whatever happens, if banks are not accessible, you can't go to an ATM, because if there is a flood or something, then the only thing that will be helpful will be cash. So at least 1 month of cash should necessarily be there. You can obviously keep more, whatever makes you comfortable, but 1 month of cash should be necessarily, hard cash should be there at home. So let us look at what are the different avenues for creating emergency corpus. These are very simple things. And like I said, the intention here is not to create wealth. This is not to compound your wealth or gain higher interest. What is important is that the money is stable and it is available whenever we want. It's at a click. It should be with us. So the first and most easily accessible thing is your savings bank account. Best part about it is that it is easy to operate, and almost all of us have it. But there are two cons to it. One is that it earns very low interest rate, and also it's very easy. So for anyone who doesn't have too much of discipline of controlling his expenses, he might just spending up that money even if there is not an emergency. And upgrade to that is a sweep in bank account. So a lot of banks are offering this sweep facility where after a certain balance, your money is transferred to a temporary FD, and again at a click of a button or even on debit card transaction, that money is swept back into your savings account. So that is a good option to have. You can also have fixed deposits, but make sure that the fixed deposits are all enabled to do transactions online. So you don't have to go to the bank physically to do a transaction. If you want a premature withdrawal in case of an emergency, it should be easily available. So there has to be an online access to it. Uh, if we talk about investing in mutual funds, liquid funds is the kind of funds which invest into bonds which are maturing not more than 90 days after 90 days. So these are also a very good option because on a net of tax basis, they give you a better return than a fixed deposit. And also it is very liquid. There is no entry or exit charges to it. The only drawback is that the money would reach you on the next day. It will not be available like right at the click. It will not be immediately credited to your bank account. If you do a transaction today, then the money will come tomorrow. An extension to liquid fund is a short-term debt fund where you might get a higher return, but there is a higher risk to it. I think this is only for some people who are a bit adventurous because there is only a small part of your wealth that you're going to keep in emergency. So you should not be looking at investing it in a short-term debt fund. I think liquid fund or a fixed deposit or a sweep in bank account is something that will do the work for us. So like we discussed about the first reflection, the action that I want to take is right now immediately note for yourself that you understand what your monthly expenses are, and I want to create an emergency fund for so much month of expenses, which will be rupees so and so, and I will park this money in so and so avenue. So whether it is 6 months, 12 months, anything that you would want to do that, I would just want to give you 30 seconds and for you to write as to what action will you take on this part. Okay, great. So let us know if you have any questions regarding this, but don't worry about creating wealth. Don't worry about, I want to invest for long term, markets are down. Those things don't matter. If you don't have a good risk management practice in place, all your investment planning can go for a toss. And that is why it is very important not to fall for the in the trap of making higher returns from your right first rupee that you are earning. What is first important is that you create an emergency fund for yourself. So we spoke about liquidity risk and how to manage that. Then there are some financial risks. What happens if there is a loss of income or there is some increased expenses? And what are the insurance coverage that I can take, whether it is in terms of life and medical? So we're going to talk about insurance coverage. A lot of people, most of you would have known what is life insurance. They would have invested or they would have at least been pitched by someone or the other to buy life insurance. I'm not going to talk about each product, but I've just lined up certain do's and don'ts, which I think are very, very important, and you should take care when you are thinking about putting your money or taking a life insurance cover. So first thing is that why is it life insurance important? Obviously, because nobody thinks about your family as much as you do. So you are the one who want to take care of them, and you are not taking it for yourself, right? You're taking it so that after you, your spouse, your kids, or parents can live a life with the same standard of living that you had planned for them. And when do you take a plan? There is no right time to buy an insurance. as soon as someone is dependent on you, you should buy a life insurance for yourself. Maybe even from your first salary itself. And how much should be your life insurance? So you should, the amount should be such that it should take care of all your future expenses and goals. So there are a lot of calculators which are available, something called as human life value and such things. But if you can envisage what is the amount of expenses that you're going to do in all your life, this is something that you should put in total and take a cover of that. As a thumb rule, around 20 times of your annual income, you should take an insurance. Initially, you start with at least. If you have not covered till that, that is what in some cases maximum a company, insurance company offers. So we feel there is absolutely no harm for you to max out that option and take the maximum cover that is available. But one most important thing is that you should only buy term insurance. Insurance, which is my last point, is that don't buy life insurance as an investment or for tax saving. I mean, some people invest, buy insurance in the month of March because they feel that they're going to get tax benefit out of it. Or some people want to invest because some policy is closing and someone is promising higher returns or guaranteed returns. We feel that you have to have some very exceptional need if you want to buy an investment based insurance. It is not generally not advisable that you buy a investment based insurance. So only buy term insurance, plain vanilla term insurance, which can give you the maximum cover that you require for. And it's available at a lot of places. You can, there's so many online portals which are offering you this. So many companies are directly offering on their website. Whatever you feel comfortable with, please take that insurance. Similarly, in health insurance, we have certain do's and don'ts. First thing is that if you are employed and you are not buying a health insurance for yourself because your company is already covering it to you, that's a big red flag. You should buy your own health insurance. Don't depend on company's cover. There are 2-3 reasons for it. First is that if you are switching jobs, between the jobs or even you are at sabbatical, no company would be covering you. We have had such kind of clients who had to undergo some kind of medical treatment during that period, and he did not have any cover of his own, so he had to end up spending from his own pocket. Also, at times, at certain age, you will not be insurable. If God forbid, if there is a certain ailment that you have, then at that point in time, if you want to buy insurance, you will not be able to buy. So after a certain age, when you stop working for a company, if you're not working as an employee, then you obviously the company will not cover you, and for you it will be very difficult to buy an health insurance for yourself at that point in time. So buy your own insurance from day one. Don't be dependent only on company's cover. What also we suggest that obviously there are ways in which you compare various insurance options that are available to you, premiums, features that are available. One very small but very important thing is that when you buy a policy, you already have certain hospitals that you're comfortable with, which are in your vicinity. Maybe some doctor that you're comfortable with are practicing there. So try and make sure that if you're choosing an insurance policy, those hospitals that you're comfortable with are in the cashless list. Also, if you're planning to take a top up is another form of health insurance which is taken over an existing insurance that you might have. You can also take a top up in if you have a company cover, and then later you can convert your top up to your base policy as well. But try and take the top up from the same company where you have an existing insurance. This is because if you have a claim and it is from 2 different insurance companies, you'll have to first put a claim in your base company, do all the paperwork, and then repeat the whole process again with the second insurance company. So not only it is cumbersome and time consuming, but also delays your claim and like I said, takes a lot of time. Also, most important, in life insurance, there are a lot of options where you can revive your policy, and even if the policy is lapsed, when you revive it, it gets restored to the same benefits. But in health insurance, missing your premium is a very big red flag, because once your policy expires and you buy a new policy, then you will have to end up buying a new policy, and then those new policies will have their own waiting period and limits and all. So you don't want to get into that. So make sure that try to keep your health insurance on auto paying mode through an ECS. don't miss your health insurance premium. I said about life insurance, there are not really any calculators which are available for computing how much health insurance would work for you. But aim for cover of at least 25 lakhs by age 40. Age 40 is something that we feel that there are very less chances that you might be diagnosed with any kind of ailment. So in today's term, I think 25 lakh is a good cover. Maybe in future for coming few years, I think it will be a good amount of cover to have. So at least 25 lakhs of cover by age 40. So again, this is our reflection 3. I want you to right now take this step and fill for yourself. I'll protect my family by insuring myself with a term plan of rupees so and so and a health insurance of rupees so and so. So again, I'll give you 30 seconds. Please fill up this amount. Otherwise, just for knowledge, it will just be a feel-good factor. Okay. So let's go ahead. So let's come to goal planning. Now once you have mitigated your risks and you know that those things are in place, now we start thinking about investment. And before we start talking about investment, what is important is that we have an end goal in mind. So this is a sheet which I have taken from a very famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And he's very nicely explained what is the difference between a rich person and a middle class person's income and expense statement. So let me just activate this. So if you see what he's saying is that this is an income statement of a rich person. No, I screwed up somewhere. Okay. And okay. And this is an income statement of a middle class person. Now, what is the difference here? What is a rich person doing? Just a second. Okay, this is good. So what is the rich person doing is that he has a lot of income, and with those incomes, ultimately he is continuing to stay rich. Is that because with that income, he has bought those assets, and with those assets, now he's earning everything again, and he's using all that income to pay expenses and creating liabilities. So really, he doesn't need to earn actively to take care of expenses. When we start our career, what do we do is that we have an active income which is in form of salary, or whether it is profits in business or profession. And then instead of creating our assets, most of the time money would go either in spending, which are expenses that we have, or we end up creating liabilities, whether it is in form of mortgages, car loan, credit card debt, whatever it is. So ultimately we keep whatever we earn, we keep on spending. There are expenses or there are liabilities. Ultimately our aim is to move from this to this part where our income is supported completely by the assets that we have. This is what we call as financial freedom. So I think this should be our first goal about when we start investing. So what I just explained to you, what is financial freedom, how do we do it? Before doing that, before telling you how do we do it, let me just tell you what is not financial planning for financial freedom or planning for your retirement. Retirement planning and financial freedom are words we can use interchangeably. But a lot of people resonate with retirement planning and not with financial freedom. And people think that they've taken care of it by doing certain actions, but I want to strongly suggest that these things are not retirement planning. So if you just have bought a pension plan, it's not retirement planning. In fact, it is the worst form of retirement planning, because generally pension plans are not guaranteed. The amount of pension will be decided when your pension will actually start. So you don't know today how much pension you're going to receive. Similar like a pension plan, some people also buy pure life insurance policies for retirement planning. Sorry, that is also not retirement planning. if you consider your PF, whether it is your EPF or the PPF that in which you have been accumulating money, that is also not retirement planning. It's just an investment product. It will not be sufficient. Again, another no is depending on your children for your retirement. That is completely not retirement planning. And if you feel that you've bought a property, maybe a farmhouse or just some property at the outskirts or in some remote place, even that is not retirement planning. So when you look at retirement planning, this is how people really look at retirement planning, and that is exactly what is wrong. So what we do is that how we look our life is that we'll start working at whatever age, say for example from 30 to age 60, and then we'll live a retirement life from 60 to 90. But how it actually works is that when you are when you start working from age 30, you every year of working, you don't only have to earn as much money that helps you in sustaining that years of expense, but you also have to save enough that from age 61 it will help you start supporting. So every year you are spending and you are saving simultaneously so that it can start coming to you or be useful to you after age 60. So both of these will run in parallel. It doesn't work that it will happen on a linear basis that first you live a working life and then you live a retirement life. You'll never be able to plan that way. What is important is that as we start working, we also start planning for our retirement. So let's do some math on retirement planning. Okay. This is a quick sheet and I am running very slow, but let us try and do it as quick as possible. So we'll share this sheet with you as well. Okay. This is a very simple calculator that we have made. I've already pre-filled this data. We can change it the way you want, but this is for you to understand and so that you can start using this sheet. Suppose today I have a monthly expense of 30,000 rupees, and another this is absolutely must for me to survive my day-to-day living. And then I have I'm on this area. And then if, I think I'd spend another 10,000 rupees every month on my lifestyle expenses, probably, for my entertainment, going movies or eating out, but which are also essential things for me to do. So then I feel that 40,000 per month is my absolute monthly expense that I will require to spend even at the time of retirement. And these are the expenses today that I am doing. So today's current annual expense is 4,80,000 rupees. This is inflation. This is my assumption. If you want, you can change this assumption as well. If I'm assuming that the inflation is going to grow at 7%, and if my birthday is in 79, at my current age, I also have to decide at what age I want to retire. So suppose if I want to retire at the age of 55, then I have 14 years to plan for my retirement. And by virtue of that, I will retire in 2034. I am assuming that this 40,000 rupees is what I'm spending today, and that is what I'm going to spend in the future. So there will be no reduction in my expenses. So just because of 7% inflation in next 14 years, my annual expense will grow from 4,80,000 rupees to 12,37,000 rupees. It will be more than double of what I'm spending today. This is just pure basic mathematical calculation. And I'll be spending 1 lakh rupees a month. Now, if I expect to live up to age 85, and this is again your assumption, any age up to 90 you can put. After retirement from age 55 to age 85, I will have to fund with my retirement corpus next 30 years of my life. Inflation is not going to change. I'm assuming that 7% inflation is going to remain. And I am assuming that after retirement, I will not be as aggressive an investor as I would be today. So the returns that I would be able to expect on my investments will be just about 2% higher than the inflation. I think this is what is important, is that you keep a gap of not more than 1 or 2% between the inflation rate and the returns that you would get on your investments. So net return that I will be generating net of inflation will be only 1.87. By virtue of this, I would need to have a corpus of almost 3 crores at age 55 to retire. Now, if I assume that I have invested money in PF and value of my PF at that point of time will be 60 lakh rupees, I can consider that as well. That will become 20% of my required corpus. And I am also assuming that, say at that point in time, I would have fixed deposits that would be worth 5 lakh rupees. I am paying some money in insurance. So the money that I'll get back from when my insurance policies are maturing at that point in time would be 10 lakh rupees. So again, that gets deducted. So as on today, I want to create a corpus of 2 crore 12 lakh rupees. And I'm assuming that I'm a bit adventurous, taking a whole lot of risk and investing everything in equity. Even if I'm doing that, and I'm assuming that there is a return of 11% on that, that means today I need to invest almost 35 lakhs, 34 lakh 30,000 rupees, so that that corpus can grow to 2 crore 12 lakhs, or I need to invest 38,000 rupees per month. This is another thing that if you feel that every year because inflation is growing at 7%, my income will also grow at 7%. Obviously, this is not necessary. Then you can start with an investment of 27,000 rupees, but you have to make sure that every year your investment grows by 7% for next 14 years. So this is a simple calculator for you to understand that if I want to retire with 50,000 of expenses, with 40,000 of expenses today, I need to save another 40,000 rupees. This is particularly applicable to me because I'm starting to save for my retirement quite late, because there are only 14-15 years left now. And also what you will get with this sheet is that how will this corpus be utilized. So mind you that this 2 crore rupees that you are collecting or accumulating will not be passed on to the legacy. By age 85, everything will be finished. You will consume that money. So initially it will keep growing, but after that, if you remember, we mentioned that the returns on our investment will be 9%, but the inflation will be 7%. So at certain point in time, there will be a tipping point, and this corpus will start reducing. And by age 85, till what I have planned, it actually becomes zero. So this is about planning for retirement. Let me share my screen again. Yeah. So we'll send you this sheet as well. For all those people who are attending, we'll send you this sheet as well. This is the reflection number 4. Thinking about the older me in so many years, whatever you feel is the appropriate amount, year or age at which you would want to retire, I'll be able to generate a total retirement corpus of rupees dash, is what you have to decide for yourself right now. So again, I'll give you just 30 seconds for that because we are running absolutely behind time. Yeah, I mean, please do this. Yeah. So now let's come to wealth creation. So before we start talking about wealth creation, I want to talk about what are the things that stops in creating wealth. So there are two. So let me just not. So let me just first ask you this question. Okay, there is a tank which is a capacity of 200 liters. Okay, and it is already filled with 100 liters of water. But unfortunate part is that it has two leaking holes, from which in one hole it is leaking at 2 liters per minute, and in another hole it is leaking from 5 liters per minute. How much liter of water do we need to put in every minute so that we can fill the tank to its full capacity of 200 liters is the question. So let's do a poll on this. Can you start the poll? So I hope I made very clear. There is a tank which is already filled with 100 liters. Its capacity is 200 liters. There is a leakage which is happening. From one hole, you are able to, the water is leaking at more 2 liters per minute. Another it is leaking 5 liters per minute. So how many liters of water do we need to put every minute so that it can fill up to 200 liters?
We'll end the poll in the next 10 seconds. Yeah. Ending the poll now.
Okay, great. So we have obviously maximum people have told that we'll need more than 7 liters per minute. 2 people have also felt that we'll be able to do it with 7 liters per minute. Obviously, we'll not be able to do it with 7 liters or less than 7 liters because, like most of you mentioned, you guys are already smart. That if I fill 7 liters and 7 liters per minute is already leaking, then I will never be able to fill the tank. It will always remain at the same level. If I want to fill the tank, I will have to make sure that I am putting at least more than 7 liters of water in that every minute. And that is exactly what happens with our wealth. So these two leakages are nothing but taxation and inflation, right? Whatever you earn, you have to pay some taxes on that. And uh, because of inflation, your value of your money will go down by that much amount, right? So if you are not able to invest and earn more than what you're paying in taxes or the rate of inflation, that means net of inflation and net of taxes, if you're not earning more than that, that means you're not creating wealth. So eventually the water will dry out. For us to create wealth, what is important is that after paying tax, we should beat inflation. So that's why we say that fixed deposits actually can be a guaranteed negative return avenue, because after paying tax, you will never be able to generate a return which is higher than inflation. So let's assume that all your money is in fixed deposit, you are paying taxes, you are getting beaten down by inflation, your tank will never fill up. In fact, it will start going down. So I hope I'm able to make clear, give you clarity. If you have any questions, we'll take it up in Q&A. So these are the two biggest enemies, your taxation and inflation. So whenever we invest, we have to make sure that our overall portfolio is able to beat taxation and inflation. This is what inflation actually does to our money, right? Today, if I have whatever amount I have, if I'm able to buy 30 burgers with that money, with the same amount of money, if there is an inflation of 7%, I'll only be able to buy 15 burgers after 10 years, right? So basically what inflation does is it reduces the value of your money, it reduces the capacity of money to buy products. And this is how it really looks, that your purchasing power will keep on going down. We have to make sure that we are, so if in this case, if 7% is the inflation, and let's assume that 2% is the taxation cost that you would bear on your investment, if you are not making more than 9% on your portfolio, that means you are not creating wealth, right? Just to give you an example, right? So whatever is the inflation rate plus taxation cost, your net return should be more than that. So that was about, first mindset of investment. Second mindset that we need to develop is that, currently, especially in these point times, there is too much of volatility and we get bombarded by so many news channels and media and friends, and a lot of actions are being taken. This is a very simple graph done by a very reputed author. His name is Carl Richards. He's written this book, The Behavior Gap. And this is what it simply says, right? A lot of people, although how much ever stupid it might sound, we end up making the same mistake, right? When the markets are going up, we look at the hindsight and we feel that market's going to go up forever, and we buy at that point in time. And then when markets fall, we feel the same, that market's going to go down forever, and we sell. And if we keep on doing that, there's nothing else that we're going to achieve, but we are going to go broke. That's exactly what is if you see is happening with gold right now. Gold had a very superb run in last 6 months, and a lot of people are now talking about investing in gold. And no one was talking about gold 6 months before that. Everyone was talking about equity. So maybe you can call it as a recency bias, but most of us fall in this trap where we keep on buying at higher levels and selling at low levels. So the only way to come out of it is to be aware about it, right? So that is another pitfall that we should avoid. So I have told you what not to do. So what is it that we should really do, right? This is again from the same author, Carl Richards, from Behavior Gap. He's kind of described it very beautifully, that there are things that really matter to us, but there are only few things that we can really control. And whatever is the overlap of these two things, the things that matter to us and things that we can control, is what we should focus on. So what am I talking about? So let's look at this small video and then we'll talk about this.
उसकी माली हालत इतनी खराब हुई कि खाने के लाले पड़ गए। इसी कारण उसने महल से मदद मांगने का फैसला। करते हुए कहा, करते जाए तो मैं समझूंगा मुझे मेरा इनाम मिल गया। बस इतना ही? राजा ने पूछा। सिर्फ चावल का एक दाना और सोना नहीं? जी हाँ महाराज। तो फिर ऐसा ही हो। दरबारियों ने चावल के दाने रखने शुरू कर दिए।
They are able to hear now.
दूसरे में दो, तीसरे में चार, चौथे में आठ, इस तरह को रखते गए। जब 10वें खाने में चावल करने की बारी आई तो उन्हें चावल के 500 पात्र पड़े। 20वें खाने तक संख्या बढ़कर 5,24,288 हो गई। आधे हिस्से तक आते आते 32वें खाने में चावल के दानों की गिनती 214,74,83,648 हो गई। जल्द ही गिनती
Okay, we are starting the video again. I believe there was a sound issue, so we are starting it again. Sorry.
Yeah, you just start.
एक बार एक कवि हुआ करता था। उसकी माली हालत इतनी खराब हुई कि घर में खाने के लाले पड़ गए। इसी कारण उसने महल में जाकर राजा से मदद मांगने का फैसला किया। राजा के बुलाए जाने पर उसने अपनी कविताएं पढ़नी शुरू कर दी। वाह 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 वाह। राजा बहुत प्रसन्न हुआ और उसने कवि से अपना इनाम मांगने के लिए कहा। कवि ने मोहरों से सजे शतरंज की ओर इशारा करते हुए कहा, महाराज, अगर आप पहले खाने में चावल का एक दाना रखें और हर खाने के लिए उसे दुगना करते जाएं, तो मैं समझूंगा मुझे मेरा इनाम मिल गया। बस इतना ही? राजा ने पूछा। सिर्फ चावल का एक दाना और सोना नहीं? जी हाँ महाराज। तो फिर ऐसा ही हो। दरबारियों ने चावल के दाने रखने शुरू कर दिए। पहले खाने में एक, दूसरे में दो, तीसरे में चार, चौथे में 8। इस तरह वो रखते गए। जब 10वें खाने में चावल रखने की बारी आई तो उन्हें चावल के 512 दाने रखने पड़े। 20वें खाने तक संख्या बढ़कर 5,24,288 हो गई। आधे हिस्से तक आते आते 32वें खाने में चावल के दानों की गिनती 214,74,83,648 हो गई। जल्द ही गिनती अरबों खरबों में बढ़ गई। आखिरकार अभागे राजा को अपना पूरा राजपाट उस चतुर कवि के हाथों सौंपना पड़ा। और इसकी शुरुआत चावल के सिर्फ एक दाने से हुई थी। कहानी की सीख, चक्रवृद्धि की ताकत को कम नहीं आंकना चाहिए।
Okay, I'll just share my screen. Yeah, so we heard the story. Basically, what we're trying to say is that what is important for us to understand the power of compounding and focus on that. So just to give you another analogy, this is a photo of a lake. So assuming that there is a lake and it on the surface of lake, the algae starts to develop and the whole lake is covered by algae in 30 days. No, on which day was the lake half covered with algae? No, we could have done this poll on this, but just for the shortage of time, a lot of people might think that on 15th day the lake would have been half covered with algae, but that's not the case. Actually, the lake is half covered with algae on the 29th day, right? So if you think about it, yesterday probably the lake was half covered, and because it is doubling on every day, today it will get fully covered. In fact, on 15th day, it will be covered only by 0.0003%, and 1% will be covered only on the 20th day. And imagine 1% of the lake is covered on the 20th day, and next 10 days it gets fully covered by algae. So that is what the power of compounding is. It's like Einstein said, it's the eighth wonder of world, and it's almost impossible to comprehend it, on our mind, on the basis of our mindful calculations. I mean, we can't do the calculations in mind. So this is what I'm trying to say. When we are as an investor, most of us focus only on returns, right? कितना देती है is what we talk about. Equity में कितना मिलेगा, fixed deposit में कितना मिलेगा, और लास्ट एक साल का रिटर्न नेगेटिव आ रहा है, 3 साल का रिटर्न नेगेटिव आ रहा है. So most of our conversations are always focused around returns, but this is only a part of the calculation. I hope everyone knows this is the calculation for compounding, right? What it says that whatever amount I want to create. In this case, when I say that I want to create a corpus of 3 crore rupees for my retirement, what this does is that what is the amount that I want to invest today, what is the return that I need to generate on it, and then how much time do I have. So if you see in this formula, T, which is the time that we have for our investment, is exponential, right? Every single growth of unit. So if I just increase my goal from age 55 to age 65, you would see that there is a significant difference. So I am, instead of 14 years, now I have 15 years to invest, right? So every 1 unit of change in this creates an exponential difference. And this is what we need to focus on. Like you guys already mentioned, that one of the biggest mistake that you've done financially is not to start saving early. Let's not delay it further and start saving immediately. Don't wait for what is the right time, when market's conditions going to go right. These things will keep on happening, and this is something that we should not stop us from creating wealth and multiplying our wealth. So this is a perfect example of what I explained in terms of algae, or what I was saying in terms of time during the compounding. So this is the graph of world's richest investor, right? Warren Buffett, who I think most of us are aware of. He started investing at the age of 40, at the age of 14, and you can just see this graph was insignificant right up to the age of 52, right? Only at the age of 56 did he create his first billion, right? And I hope you are able to see. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is what he created here, right? And then you see the exponential growth happening. Like I said, when I give you an example of the lake was only half filled on the 29th day, and on the 30th day it becomes half fully covered, right? Same is what happens with our wealth. We are setting up ourselves for a journey to accumulate 3 crore rupees, right? Today we might have accumulated, say, 25 lakh rupees, 50 lakh rupees. Even if we have lost 10-20% on that wealth, it is not going to create much difference on the power of compounding that we're going to experience if we have enough time for ourselves. So first thing is that please don't be worried about if you're already seeing some very low returns or negative returns on your investment, because these are going to happen. No investors are spared from there. And more important is that ultimately, if you give time to your investments, you'll be able to make phenomenal returns out of it. This is what the whole crux is. It is again written, this graph is drawn by a very good blogger and author. His name is Vishal. He runs this company called Safal Niveshak. And this is what he simply says, right? This is what we earn. This is what we earn. From whatever we earn, we might spend something. And like I had shown you in that graph of Rich Dad Poor Dad, whatever you save, you invest and give it time so that it can experience the power of compounding. And little by little, little by little, it will become a lot. And then ultimately all your expenses, this blue portion, so for it will be sponsored, will be taken care of by this wealth that you have created. There is no shortcuts. There is nothing else that we can do. Once we understand this, that you start early, spend less than what you are earning, and invest this money wisely, well, for a long period of time, instead of trading and cashing in and cashing out. There is no other way, but you will end up creating wealth. So with this, yeah, there is one very quick thing, there's so this is with this I would like to end my portion on wealth creation. Just to sum it up, and there are certain key actions that that I think we should take, which we have learned during this lockdown, is that make sure that you have consolidated all your paperwork. I mean, if you have not done as yet, there was no better time, but still, if you have paperwork in place, it makes a lot of things handy. Update your nominations. If once you consolidate paperwork, you might find out there are leakages, some things are not up to date. So update your nominations. Make an arrangement to share password with your family members. This happened with one of our acquaintance, that he was the main earning member of the family, and he was diagnosed corona positive, and he was suddenly admitted in ICU. Thank God he had access to mobile and they could communicate with the family, but God forbid if there is some he's on ICU or on ventilator, then he'll not be able to do that, right? So share your password with family members so that they can access the money. Create a list of emergency numbers that your family members can access into. This is one very important thing, that physically sign your checkbook. Immediately, possibly for whatever reason, your family members might not be able to access or do transactions in your bank. Suppose you have the mobile, but you are not in communication for whatever reason. And at that point in time, our good old checkbook will only something which will come in handy. Make a will. It is not a big deal to do. There are a lot of formats which are available online. It's a very simple thing to do. You don't need to really register your will, but making a will is first step and is very important. Also, at least with one other person in your family, make sure that you are able to give an access to your mobile. So you can share your password, or you can also include your spouse's fingerprint on your mobile, so that not only you can unlock it, but also the spouse can also unlock it. So with this and a lot of hurry and time trying to manage our time, I thank you all. This is my contact details, and now I am open for questions. So maybe Jinay can start taking that.
So, thank you, Saurabh, for the fantastic session on, managing our money and creating wealth at the same time. So, till the time we get more questions on board, I was thinking if you could, throw some lights on what are the, obviously you've given us a lot of practical ways of dealing, but something for people who are in their 20s and 30s, how life basically changes for them, and how they should basically transition. Because if I'm in 20 and I have different requirements, but when I get into 30s and then 35s, my requirements change, and that is the time when we see a lot of difference in terms of managing our money. If you could throw some light on that.
So I think so that's the best age. If you can understand what is the power of compounding at that point in time and start investing. Unfortunately, what has happened is that, and this is my personal experience, might not be necessarily true, that we have from a nation of savers we've actually become a nation of spenders. So
Right.
I have met people who are barely able to make their ends meet, but still they want to go ahead and take a loan just to buy another mobile phone or maybe even a two-wheeler or something like that. So it's very, very unfortunate. So if you are able to, like I just showed in that graph, whatever you are start as soon as you earn, make sure that you are spending less than what you are earning, and you are saving amount for it for your futures, for your future self. I think that's something which is applicable to all of us. The sooner you do it, easier it is for you. There is enough of wealth to be created.
Great, great, great. So with that, we'll go on to the first question. So Vinay Singh has asked for your view on VPF.
So, PF as such is a great vehicle to invest what happens in PF is that there is actually no control on the kind of contribution that will be done because it is stipulated by regulations, right? So a part of basic is contributed by you, and that part of basic is contributed. Another part of basic is contributed by your employer. What VPF, which is voluntary provident fund, does is to give you an opportunity to invest further more money or PF. Now you would have to note this that your company PF rates of interest are higher than your PF rates, PPF rates. So if you are someone who was wanting to invest in PPF, it is always better that instead of investing in PPF, and again there are no limits to that. In PPF there is a limit of 1.5 lakh rupees per annum, including your minor child. So if you want to have a higher exposure to fixed income, and you feel that PF is a good avenue for doing that, then you can definitely increase your contribution towards your PF through VPF.
Uh, Sid has asked that do you do portfolio management and how can he get more information about the same?
So portfolio management is a very term which is used very loosely, and there are regulations for it as well, but some people have different understanding for it. I'm not sure what you are asking. So there is one portfolio management services which are stipulated by SEBI. It is a kind of a product where you can invest into it. It's called PMS, Portfolio Management Services. And what happens is that in India, there are about 320 PMS providers which are functioning today, and they have their own products. So they have defined their products, its nature. And if you feel that you want to invest in them, mainly they are equity PMS, and you can buy, the fund manager then buy shares for you. So we don't do that kind of PMS. We are not product manufacturers. We are basically ones who act like your CFO. So if you are an investor, you need to take a look at 360-degree of your finances, whether it is investment, your taxation, your loans that you are already having, what is the cost of loan that you have, how are you managing your cash flows, what is the kind of risk profile that you have, what are your liquidity requirements, so on and so forth. Depending on that, what we do is that when we manage your complete wealth. So for some people it also seems like managing your complete portfolio. So if you are asking from that perspective, yes, we do complete wealth management, but we are not product manufacturers. We sit on your side of the table and see which product will suit you best. So we are not biased. We are not tied up with any product manufacturer or any product itself. So we're not biased towards anything in that form.
So he's just followed it up with saying that he meant to ask, do you review existing investment and recommend investment kind of wealth management?
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly what we do. And when we review it, again, our review will not be on basis of returns that it is making. It will be more on how your needs are. We'll also consider what are those things, whether the fund manager has actually done what he's promised to do, and is that what you really need. Basis of that, we may rejig your portfolio, but just to adopt a portfolio, just to invest or reject a portfolio based on its past performance is something not that we don't want to do.
Great. Amit Sangpal has asked, what is good for tax saving, ELSS or post Suraksha Samriddhi scheme?
So see, this is again what we are trying to say is that when we invest, we only try to cater to our today's problem. There is no answer to what is best, right? For someone who's making a return of 12%, he might not be happy. And for someone who's making a return of 7%, he might be very, very happy. So it actually depends on what your needs are, what your current portfolio is positioned like, and how much risk do you want to take. If you look at from a pure return perspective, equity will always have a higher potential to give you returns as compared to fixed income. So ELSS is investments primarily in equity, and postal savings is primarily investing to fixed income or debt. So it will be very, so first of all, they're not comparable because they're completely different asset classes. But if you feel that returns are your ultimate objective, that out of these two I want to make anything which is giving you higher return, then ELSS will do the job, but it will come at a cost of the volatility risk. So in postal savings, you might see your value growing up linearly every month or every year when the interest gets credited. But ELSS will not work that way. You might see 40% returns in 1 year, you might see minus 20% in another year. So, and you will be exposed to that kind of volatility. So if you are ready to take a volatility and just stay invested for next 10 years, there are very high chances that you will make better returns in ELSS. So this is a very age-old thumb rule that you invest in equity 100 minus your age. So if I am 40 today, I would invest 60% in equity and 40% in debt. But this is just a thumb rule, you know. I think that is the crux of what we do. Because how do you determine what asset allocation will work for you? Let me give you an analogy. See, when someone is planning a diet for you, you cannot say that carbs are best or protein are good or fat is good or bad, you know, and you can't discard them saying that I don't need it. For a wholesome value, all these macronutrients are required, and the proportion of that will be dependent on your requirement, your target, and what is the kind of things that you can perceive and continue. Similarly, it works in investment also. It is very difficult to give a blank point thumb rule which will be applicable to everyone, saying that itna equity rakho, itna debt rakho at this age and you will do the job. It completely depends on what your goals are, how much risk you are able to take. But just to give you a thumb rule, 100 minus your age should be your equity allocation. It's not the great way of investing, but it is something that you can start with.
Yeah, balance is the key. So last couple of questions before we end this session are from Mohini. Till what age is it advisable to continue with term insurance? Is the first question.
Sorry?
Till what age is it advisable to continue with term insurance?
See, there are two views into it. One is that for definite, your insurance is required only till someone is dependent on you. So suppose if I'm at age 40 and I have created enough wealth for myself that today, even if I die tomorrow, my family will be inheriting that wealth so that they can continue to maintain their standard of living. So I will not require any insurance. So it is a factor of how much money am I going to create in future, or how much corpus I have created today so that my dependents can continue to maintain the same standard of living. Generally, we know that, so suppose if I'm planning to retire at age 55 or 60, there will be a very high chance that I've accumulated that required corpus and I don't need to earn myself physically or have an active income for my family to be dependent on me. So whatever you feel is the age after which your family will not be dependent on you, you will not be making any active physical income, that is the time when you should take insurance. There is another view to it, which is that suppose today if I take an insurance up to age 60, God forbid if I'm not able to collect that amount of corpus, then what happens? Then I will be forced to work even after age 60. And that is what is happening with a lot of developed economies and even in even in India, where people are forced to work even beyond their stipulated retirement age. Also, as my age will progress, I know that it will be very difficult for me to sustain at a higher age. So if I have paid a premium up to age, say if I have to take a policy up to age 70, why not take up to age 80? After 70, probably my children or anyone who's dependent on me can choose to pay the premium, and they will get the benefits if I die. You know, so if you want to, it's a baniya buddhi kind of thing, honestly, that you know कि अगर प्रीमियम भरा है तो उसको वसूल करेंगे, तो जितना हो सके maximum I'll take insurance. But for sure the minimum age for you to take insurance is when you are clear that by this age my family will be dependent on me.
Okay, and the last question that we take for today is, considering the current real estate scenario, is it advisable to go for a house purchase, or is renting the way to go? I think this is one question that a lot of us have. Considering the way prices are supposed to come down, and a lot of even Piyush Goyal has recently commented something around that part.
See, honestly, I feel that I mean, I understand that a lot of people have this apprehension, but I feel honestly is that this question really depends on what your needs are. Again, everything has to be aligned to your goals, right? It's not that you have been sitting on that much amount of cash and was waiting for the prices to fall so that you can invest. Now it doesn't happen that way. It should not happen that way. I mean, we can't be too opportunistic on every kind of investment that we want to do. And that is what the whole thing that planning does to us, is that we create financial plan, we decided the allocation that we want to have, and continue to have that allocation and keep rebalancing our assets. But if you ask me, if I have to give a view on real estate, there are different views to it. Again, I am not saying that it will go up or go down, but there are two to three things that I think you should take a note of. One is that the current government is very highly focused on creating jobs and creating businesses so that employment can be created. One of the biggest hurdle for any business to become viable is the real estate cost, right? If the real estate costs are high, living or expenses will be high, so the labor cost will be high. It will be difficult for them to put up plants, and the plants will not be viable if the places where they are putting up those plants are very costly. So the government is kind of taking steps, at least they're making sure that they would want to try and control the real estate prices, right? They would ideally not want, they are also focused on housing for all. So housing for all will only be possible if the house prices are in control. So given what government is trying to do, there are very less chances that the prices will go up suddenly from where they are. Another way to look at it is that we all know what is opportunity cost. Since last 4 or 5 years, we know that the property prices have not gone anywhere, right? So even if you take 8% as per annum interest cost or an opportunity cost, and even if I forget compounding, last 5 years growth is 40%. So basically, if property prices are same where they were 5 years back, that means they're already 40% cheaper, right? So if you are looking for a property, and another thing to look at is if you have been in touch with any huge fan of a real estate investor, none of them are excited anymore. There was a time when you used to go and watch a property and try to finalize it in next week. You might see that the property is already sold. So those things are not there anymore. If there are people who were hardcore real estate investors, and now even they are not investing in real estate. So like Warren Buffett said that be greedy when everyone else is fearful, and be fearful when everyone is greedy. So there are enough evidence that a lot of people are fearful about investing in real estate. So maybe it's a good time in that sense then.
Okay, so Amit Sangpal, this one is for sure definitely the last one.
No, I am okay. I mean, as long as participants are there, I'm happy.
Okay, so is it possible to generate second income from my investment? Is what Amit Sangpal is.
That is exactly what we're trying to say. That
Correct.
is what is financial freedom. Is that we will be able to generate. We have seen investors who are able to take care of their day-to-day livings only on the basis of dividends that they're receiving on the shares. So mind you, the average dividend yield in India is not more than 2.5-3%, right? Just on the dividend that they are receiving, they are able to take care of your annual expenses. So they have huge amount of wealth to be created. The value of their stocks are just going up. So it's definitely possible. It's just that we feel it is too far-fetched because it can't be done overnight. It takes its own time to build up. But if patiently, bit by bit, you keep on investing, the power of compounding will make sure that you have enough corpus that can not only help you in sustaining throughout your life, but it can also outlive you.
Okay, great. So I think we've come to an end of the Q&A session as well. I think thank you everybody for being. You've been a great audience.
Yeah, so I just want to say that first of all, thank you so much. We have good enough of participants who participated today. We have already shot 20 minutes up, and I hope it was of value to you. We are going to be sending you two things. One, if you have not already received, we are going to send you a worksheet where you can write down all these reflections that we spoke about. Make sure at least one action you start taking on it immediately. I mean, that's the whole point of it. If you are able to take it, even one action, I will feel that this seminar was worth it. And second is that we are also sending you that Excel sheet for you to at least start and contemplating what your retirement corpus should be. So that's it from my side as well.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. क्वेश्चंस कम था तो बस करने के लिए मैंने बोला क्या